Hey everybody, this is AI with Dr. Craig Hansen. I'm delighted to have Nick here from Australia, and he's written some really interesting articles about technology change and AI. Hi, Nick.
Hi, Craig. How are you?
Really good. I was reading your three I's
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
article and three. What
Curious.
were the
Yeah.
other three?
Three P's, wasn't
Three
it? Yes,
P.
from someone I'm interacting with, which came up just in a call, and yeah, it was the power, perils, and practice, which I quite liked as well. Yes.
Really good at positioning change and new technologies and how to get
Hmm.
your thinking around how do we set our schools, our educators up for success and our students as well. Why don't you give us all a bit of a background on where you've come from and how you arrived at this space?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll keep it as brief as possible. As people who pick up on accents will tell, I'm not. I'm actually just north of Brisbane, and I've been here 20 years. But I'm originally from the UK, and that's where I did all my direct teaching. I guess I started as a mainstream teacher,
Hmm.
then more by accident than by design. Ended up in special ed for many years, and I always said, I don't know what this says. It suited me, and I suited it. Believe people to decide why that might be. My reflections, given many years later, is I think it was the opportunity to be creative. You had to be creative, and so that really suited me, and that sort of links to why I'm doing what I'm doing. So yeah, 20 years ago, moved to Australia. I was doing some research on leadership in special schools,
Hmm.
so that brought me over here. Done lots in the behaviour support space, but always had an interest. I've always been, I guess, what you call an early adopter around
Hmm.
technology. I still remember, firing up the first laptop that took about half an hour, half an hour to wait. And the person said, "Well, I could have done the job by now," and all those other bits. And yeah, and we might well get onto this, but it also the nervous excitement I had around when I first got on the internet. Again, obviously going back a good few years now. And I had the same feeling when I tried, because chatbots have been around for ages, haven't they? Really, and
Hmm.
they, Clippy way back was a very early version. And for those of
Oh,
a certain
Clippy.
age, might remember trying to get rid of it. Um, and yeah, they're all generally underwhelming, I guess, around those bits. But about 18 months ago, tried what was then, well, still is Chat GPT 3.5, and it was just that, oh my god, this is the game changer, and that's 18 months ago, and a lot's happened since then. But yeah, and it's, for me, it is around the opportunities. So I'm always looking at, okay, what might be the implications of this, both at a personal level, but given my background and worked a lot with, and continue to work a lot with people in education, what might be the implications for school leaders? That's generally where I start, and I can explain that if needs be, but teachers and ultimately, obviously, students.
Right. And because you've done your research in leadership and special education, I'd just love to know, do you see that leadership in special education or special support services, do you think leadership in that space is different than other educational leadership?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And at the risk of putting off my special ed or putting offside my special ed colleagues in that way, it's not as different as sometimes we think it is. So I do believe there are some differences, and I can articulate those. But I think we can overplay the difference in all of those. At the end of the day, you're still leading a school environment with teachers and with kids. Obviously, can be much more complicated and complex, but some mainstream schools that are just as complicated and complex in terms of the nature of the young people and the community and everything else we're supporting. And so it does just depend on the school, really. But the additional bits that you had a lot of, and I'm always very conscious, I'm talking about 20 years ago, since I was a school principal. So, I'm very conscious of things will have absolutely changed a lot. But is the, I guess, the extra stuff around complex needs. So the extra professionals you generally have to interact with, and often, more complexities around support, families going through all sorts of different challenges. But that's not just for kids with disability. Obviously, that can play out in lots of spaces.
Yeah. I've just been spending a lot of time with a specialist school in the south of Auckland, and the principal there is has to be dynamic and constantly moving, and the number of different professionals that come in to support those students. So,
Yeah.
from speech and language to physical therapists, from government agencies to community services, everything that you're saying that goes beyond just the teacher or the teacher aide in the classroom is massive. And then you have mainstream schools where the learning support coordinator or the SENCO coordinator, who's usually a DP, carrying all of that responsibility as well. It's a real challenge, and I think it's there's a lot more personal capacity and personal organization and personal interrelational communication that that person has to carry beyond regular leadership.
Yeah, and I think it is, and again, it will vary depending on the school, but there's also can be greater impact in
Mm,
terms of the background and we say empathy is a great thing, but overplayed can become, burn people out because you're
yes.
feeling so bad about the situation the young people and the families are finding themselves in. So you have to have a way of managing that. And again, it's not that that doesn't happen in mainstream, but it's happening probably for the vast majority of students in a specialist environment.
Mm. I've seen some really interesting technology just to segue into that
Mm.
space with accessible needs support and technology, which is evolving quite rapidly. And the recent release last week of ChatGPT 4.0 with the
Yeah.
vision and instant translation, I just thought, wow, what did you think when you saw that?
Yeah, look, it's a fascinating space, and it does open up huge opportunities to democratize access and communication. I think there's
Mm,
huge opportunities. There's people doing incredible work in this space, but I think it can really supercharge that access. Where and there's a bit I read recently about, and there's a darker side, the shadow side to all of this, isn't there? We always got to be mindful of, but actually in your iPhones and your iPad, it's going to have eye tracking built in. So what was used to be a really, really expensive way, and it's been around for years, but it was super expensive to give kids who might have physical disabilities and
mm,
or cognitive disabilities, they're going to be able to just look at a certain app and open it, so that again makes access so much more easier for a lot of young people who are currently experiencing challenges around those bits. So I think the opportunities are huge. As I say, and we can talk about this if useful. There is a shadow side that I'm particularly cautious around AI. That we don't rush headlong into all the techno optimist view of it, but because there are huge opportunities, but for me there are huge risks as well. More so probably with this technology than any other that I've experienced.
yeah, I agree. I agree. So, what do you think about AI and its future potential, and just across education in general, and what do educational leaders need to be aware of?
Yeah, and look at, and this is part of the challenge that you'll know very well, Craig, is there is so much coming so fast.
Yes.
Again, I've never seen anything anything come at this sort of rate before. We're all experiencing exponential, aren't we, developments in all of that, and it's just trying to navigate that. So one of the things I think about for leaders, and I often that is my frame of reference. What might this mean for school leaders in this situation? Is who are your trusted sources? And I used to say to
Mm,
our kids years ago, just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true, and that's never been more relevant really with all deep fakes and all these sorts of things coming out. So who might you go to give you a sense? Because it's not as though day-to-day business of a school has slowed down. That's got faster
mm,
and faster and busier. And now you've got this on top of it. So how can you make sense of the fire hose of information and opportunities around that? And it is a bit, so this is a challenge that I try and throw out to leaders is you need to find a way of doing that though, because this isn't going anywhere, and we're actually
that's right.
potentially doing a disservice to kids if we don't do this. So I say my focus has always been, how do we take school leaders on this journey, given they are busy and of a certain age, which means they're less likely to probably be early adopters. That's not, that's a massive generalization. And I think it is that, how do we give them enough? I always used to say it's about having a lot of narrow knowledge across a wide range of things. Have I got enough knowledge to ask the right question? Rather than trying to be an expert in all that. I'm not an expert in AI by a long way. But have I got, that's for me, have I got enough knowledge or information that if a teacher or a parent comes and asks me a question, or comes with a great idea, I can ask the right questions just to check out we're not going off into dangerous territory where
Mm,
privacy and all those security things that can put people at risk around this, but we're not also just dismissing it because it's new. So
mm,
I think it's, helping leaders, who are your trusted sources so you can have enough knowledge to ask the right questions.
mm. Are there a couple of sites or platforms or opportunities that you would recommend?
Yeah, so one there was a couple of people that spring that well, there's a few people that spring to mind as I think about it, but one is Ethan Mollick. I don't know if you've come across Ethan Mollick's work over in the States. He's a professor, I think Wharton University, off the top of my head,
Mm,
who does a lot in that space, and he's a considered. So I try and find people who are considered in their approach. They've certainly got significant knowledge, but it's not this is the best thing ever. It's going to save us all, but also not all about doom either, because there's a lot of that around as well.
mm,
Leon Furze, Furze, who's in Australia. I haven't spoken with Leon. I'm going to speak with him next week because he's doing a lot from a teacher level. So he's
right.
doing lots of stuff, looking at assessment and all those sort of pieces that are significant. And it is an interesting one, in terms of an emerging interest for me is how do I work with others to find a space that school leaders can go into and feel safe? Because you can feel so overwhelmed that
Yes.
you just don't. You put your head in the sand, and this is going to, the coming wave. That is a really good book around that. Mustafa Suleiman. I think it is for me. It's about just raising awareness around that. So I think there's a way of an opportunity to work with key people is to say, here's some ways you can get 2 or 3 minute videos or 2 or 3 minute things around that space, because there is a lot of people and there's lots of others and it's that I've come across that are doing some fascinating work in this space, and their major focus, and quite rightly so, is often the students and the teachers, because that's absolutely where the rubber hits the road, isn't it, so
Mm,
to speak. My particular passion, I guess, is, and ultimately that's where I hope it makes the most difference, is how to help school leaders.
mm,
Because I always said, as a school, having been a school leader, if I said I didn't have the time or money, it's generally because I didn't think it was important enough.
right.
And there's limitations on time and money, absolutely, but often it is. There's creative ways around it if you really
Yes.
believe in it. There are, but it doesn't mean it's easy. But if people think the easy option is just to think it will go away or someone else will sort it, where school leaders, and I think it can really help their jobs, in terms of it can do a lot of the heavy lifting of the things they're already doing. And it's not about handing it all over. I'm a big believer in human in the loop. So it's working out, when do I position myself, or who do I position, where do I position in this, rather than just handing it over. But it could do, I was talking to someone yesterday, a lot of the management side of things, and so actually leave the leaders to do the leadership, the human, have more conversations with kids, with parents, with teachers, rather than getting lost behind the hundreds of emails they get
Mm,
every day. So it can help around that. And literally just this morning, I've started developing some thinking around becoming humane, where
I saw
humane
that.
is
Yes.
HUM, capital A, capital IN. I quite like A, obviously, it combines that. How might humans use AI to help them have more time for what's really important? But also, yeah, that play on words with humane is quite quite a nice one. As I say, it's not my word, humane. I share in the post on LinkedIn where the genesis of that, but it's really been playing on my mind. What are the opportunities with AI, and then what are the implications for humans? Then what is it? Because AI and generative AI, I'm talking of specifically here, is getting better and better at nearly everything. People talk about creativity. It's super creative and
Mm,
it's limitless supply. I'm not saying it's all good. That's the human in the loop bit, but it's super, it can demonstrate empathy. Won't
mm.
feel it, but it's better. There's some research about doctors and, about that. And the AI responses were deemed to be better than the doctor responses in terms of what they'd say. So as a
Yeah.
doctor, if I am, because they're super intelligent in particular fields, but it doesn't always mean they're great emotionally intelligent. I'm not saying
Right.
all doctors are like this, but some might be. And then so you go, okay, I've got to tell someone some really bad news. I'd use it. How might I share, some horrible news, they got cancer or you're dying or whatever else? How might I share that with this person? Because some can be quite blunt. And and I know that that's part of probably a coping strategy, but actually you can find a better connection. You don't have to be thinking about it. You just tap it into your AI and it'll come up with suggestion. Think,
Mm.
okay, this is how I might phrase it in a way that's, and the same for school leaders. How might I respond to this really irate parent?
Mm.
And just it can build in a bit of thinking and processing time, which is generally helpful rather than the emotional response that can come out at times.
Yeah. Well, Nick, thank you so much for your time. What's the best way for school leaders and others to get hold of you?
Probably the simplest way, Craig, is just Nick Burnett on LinkedIn sort of thing. There's Nick Burnett Consulting, because I'm sure there's plenty of Nick Burnetts on there. But yeah, very happy to reach out and always happy to have a conversation around this.
Wonderful. I'll include your LinkedIn profile link wherever this video is. Thank you so much for your
Perfect.
time.
Pleasure. Thanks for reaching out, Craig.